The stone struck between her shoulder blades as she bent to gather wood. She didn't flinch. The children who threw it were already running, their laughter thin and sharp in the desert air. She straightened slowly, arms full of dead mesquite branches, and continued walking toward the camp. No one looked at her. No one ever did, unless it was to make her look away first. Her name was Kaya, though few spoke it. Most called her nothing at all, or used the word that meant burden, or shadow, or the thing that follows. She had lived with the band for as long as memory reached back, but she did not belong to them. Not in the way that mattered. Not in the way that made you safe. The sun was setting over the Chiricahua Range, painting the rocks the color of old blood. Smoke rose from cook fires in the camp below, a scattered collection of wickiups built in the shelter of a box canyon. It was late autumn, and the band was preparing to move deeper into the mountains before the first snow came. Everyone had work to do. Everyone except her, until someone decided she was needed. She carried the wood to the edge of camp and set it down near the fire pit, belonging to an elder woman named Nalin. The old woman sat outside her wickiup, grinding mesquite pods in a stone mortar. She didn't look up when Kaya approached. "I brought wood," Kaya said quietly. Nalin's hands continued their work, methodical and unhurried. The muscles in her weathered face tightened almost imperceptibly. "Leave it there." Kaya set the bundle down and turned to go. "Your face is dirty," Nalin said. "You shame us when the men return from hunting." Kaya touched her cheek. It was dusty from the trail, nothing more. She nodded and walked toward the creek that ran along the canyon floor. The water was cold and clear, fed by springs high in the mountains. She knelt on the smooth stones at the edge and cupped water to her face, scrubbing away the dust. Her reflection wavered in the current dark eyes, strong cheekbones, black hair that hung past her shoulders in a single thick braid. She looked like the other women. She spoke Apache as they did. But something marked her as different, something she could not see and did not understand. She heard footsteps on the rocks behind her and tensed. "Still here, Shadow?" The voice belonged to Nate, a warrior 3 winters older than her own 20 years. He was tall and lean, with scars on his arms from battle and the hunt. Other women watched him with interest. He watched Kaya with contempt. She stood and turned to face him, keeping her eyes level but not challenging. "I was cleaning my face, as Nalin asked." "Nalin asks you to do many things. The rest of us wonder why she bothers." He stepped closer. "We wonder why any of us bother. You eat our food. You use our water. What do you give in return?" "I work. You work when told like a dog." "A dog is more useful." She said nothing. Speaking would only prolong this. Nate studied her face, his expression shifting from contempt to something harder to read. "You don't even know where you came from, do you? What band lost you? Or were you stolen? Maybe your own people threw you away, and we were stupid enough to take you in." The words were not new. She had heard variations of them her whole life, but they still landed like stones, each one adding to a weight she carried everywhere. "I should go," she said. "There is more work." His hand shot out and gripped her upper arm, just below the shoulder. His fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. She gasped, not from the pressure on her arm, but from the sudden burning pain that flared across her shoulder blade. Nate saw her reaction, and his eyes narrowed. "What's wrong with your shoulder?" "Nothing." "Let me see it." "It's nothing." "An old wound." "It bothers me sometimes." He released her arm, but didn't step back. "An old wound." "From what?" "I don't remember. I was a child." This was true, and also not true. She did remember not the wound itself, but the fever that followed it, the weeks of delirium, and waking to find herself in Nalin's wickiup, already an outsider, already blamed for things she did not understand. The wound had healed into a raised scar that burned sometimes, especially when touched roughly or when the weather changed. She kept it covered. She kept everything covered. Nate watched her a moment longer, then spat on the ground near her feet and walked away. She waited until he was gone before allowing herself to breathe fully. Then she went back to camp. The hunters returned at dusk with a young buck and 2 rabbits. It was not much, but it was something. The women prepared the meat while the men sat near the largest fire, talking in low voices about what they had seen on the trail. There were tracks, they said. Soldiers maybe 2 days north. Not many, but enough to be careful about. Kaya worked at the edge of the activity, scraping hide that had been soaking in a mixture of water and brain matter. The work was tedious and smelled terrible, but she was good at it. Her hands were strong and her patience endless. She had to be patient. Impatience meant mistakes, and mistakes meant punishment. A young girl named Dolly brought her a gourd of water. The child was 7 or 8, with bright eyes and a quick smile. She was one of the few who spoke to Kaya without fear or malice. "Thank you," Kaya said, accepting the water. Dolly sat down on her heels nearby, watching the work. "Does it hurt your hands?" "Sometimes. But you get used to it. My mother says I'll learn to do this when I'm older." "You will. Your mother is a good teacher." Dolly picked at the edge of the hide with one small finger. Nate was angry earlier. "I heard him talking to the other warriors. He said you bring bad spirits." Kaya kept scraping, her movements steady. "Nate says many things. Do you bring bad spirits?" "I don't know. I don't think so. My mother says the spirits do what they want, not what we bring." Dolly stood up, brushing dust from her deerskin dress. "I think Nate is just mean." Before Kaya could respond, a sharp voice called from across the camp. "Dolly, come here." The girl's face fell. She glanced at Kaya, then ran toward her mother's wickiup. The woman, her name was Chi, and she was sister to one of the senior warriors, stood with her arms crossed, glaring in Kaya's direction. When Dolly reached her, Chi grabbed the girl's arm and pulled her inside, out of sight. Kaya went back to her work. Later, when the meat had been distributed and eaten, the band gathered around the fire to hear old stories. This was the time Kaya usually spent alone, in the small wickiup she'd built for herself at the far edge of camp. But tonight, one of the elders, a man named Cocheta, bent with age but still sharp-minded, called for everyone to listen. "I will tell you," he said, his voice carrying across the circle, "about the time of the first chief, and the line that flows from him to us." Kaya, sitting in shadow beyond the firelight, felt something tighten in her chest. She had heard pieces of this story before, but never the full telling. Cocheta spoke of days long past, when the Apache were even more numerous and powerful, when they held territory from the Great River to the western mountains. The first chief, he said, was chosen by the spirits themselves, marked at birth with a sign that proved his lineage descended from the Sky People. The mark was a pattern, Cocheta said, his gnarled hand tracing shapes in the air, like a star falling across the shoulder. Each child of his line carried it, proof that the blood of the first chief ran in their veins. But that was many generations ago. The line scattered. Some say it died out entirely. Some say it waits, hidden, for the right time to be revealed. Nate, sitting with the other young warriors, scoffed. "Old man, we don't need bloodlines. We need rifles and bullets. We need to know where the bluecoats are and how to avoid them." "You need to know who you are," Cocheta replied sharply. "Without that, you are nothing but wind." The old man continued the story, speaking of battles and migrations, of children lost and found, of the ways blood could hide itself in plain sight. Kaya listened, barely breathing, her hand unconsciously moving to her shoulder. The scar there, she had been told it was from a burn or a fall or a dog bite. No one seemed to remember clearly. But sometimes, in the moment between sleeping and waking, she dreamed of a woman's voice singing a song she didn't know, words she couldn't quite hear. And in those dreams, her shoulder didn't hurt. It glowed. She pushed the thought away. Dreams meant nothing. The scar meant nothing. She was nobody. The gathering broke up slowly, people drifting to their wickiups or to smaller fires. Kaya returned to her own shelter, a structure barely big enough to lie down in, and wrapped herself in a thin blanket. Sleep came slowly, and when it came, it brought the singing again. 3 days later, scouts brought news that sent the camp into controlled chaos. A column of cavalry had been spotted moving south along the river road. More than 30 soldiers with supply wagons. They were too many to fight, too close to ignore. The band would have to move immediately, deeper into the mountains where horses couldn't follow easily. Everyone worked through the night, dismantling wickiups, packing supplies, preparing for the hard climb. Kaya worked alongside the others, carrying more than her share, speaking to no one. When dawn came, they were ready to leave. The trail wound up through narrow defiles and across exposed ridges where the wind cut like a blade. The old people struggled. The children whimpered, but were quickly silenced. Everyone understood the stakes. Sound carried in the mountains, and the soldiers had Apache scouts of their own men who had chosen the white man's pay over their people's survival. Kaya carried a heavy pack of dried meat and grinding stones, walking near the rear of the column with the other women. Her shoulder burned with each step, a deep ache that spread down her arm and across her back. She ignored it. There was no choice. They walked all day and into the night, finally stopping in a high valley where spring water pooled among the rocks. The air was thin and cold. People collapsed where they stood, too exhausted to do more than drink and chew strips of dried meat. Nalan found Kaya sitting apart from the others, her pack still on her back. "Help me with my shelter," the old woman said. Kaya nodded and stood, swaying slightly. Together they erected a small frame of bent willow branches and covered it with hides. By the time they finished, full dark had fallen and the temperature had dropped further. "You carried too much," Nalan said, her voice flat. "You'll be useless tomorrow. I'll be fine. Go to sleep, and stay away from my granddaughter." Kaya blinked. "Dolly? She has been asking questions about you. About where you came from. I don't want her head filled with your strangeness. I've never told her anything strange. You don't have to tell her. You are strange." The child senses it. Nalan ducked into her shelter, leaving Kaya standing alone in the dark. She made her own small shelter and crawled inside, but sleep wouldn't come. Her shoulder throbbed with a pain that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. She reached back and touched it gently through her dress, felt the raised ridges of the scar tissue. The pattern had always been there, a mark about the size of her palm, angular and deliberate. Not random, the way most scars were, but what did it matter? It was hidden. It would always be hidden. In the morning, they moved again. They traveled for 5 more days, climbing higher into the mountains until they reached a plateau where winter came early and stayed late. Here, sheltered by towering pines and surrounded by cliffs that made approach difficult, the band made a more permanent camp. Wickiups were built with care. Storage pits were dug. Scouts went out each day to watch for soldiers and to hunt the scarce game. Kaya's work continued without pause. She gathered wood, hauled water, scraped hides, ground meal, and did whatever other tasks were demanded of her. She spoke little and was spoken to less. The pattern of her life had reasserted itself. But something had changed. She felt it in the way people looked at her, or rather, in the way they looked away too quickly when she caught them watching. Whispers followed her. Nate, in particular, seemed to watch her constantly, his expression thoughtful and cold. One afternoon, while she was carrying water back from the stream, he stepped into her path. "I've been thinking about your shoulder," he said without preamble. She stopped, the heavy water bags making her arms ache. "It's nothing. Let me see it." "No, I'm not asking, Shadow." She took a step back, but he moved faster, grabbing her arm and spinning her around. His other hand went to the neck of her dress, pulling the buckskin down to expose her shoulder blade. She tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. For a moment there was only the sound of her breathing and his harsh in the thin air. Then he released her suddenly and stepped back, his face strange. "What is that?" She yanked her dress back up, her hands shaking. "It's a scar, I told you. That's not a scar from a wound." That single quotes s dot dot double quotes. He stopped, his eyes narrowing. Where did you get that mark? I don't know. I've always had it. You're lying. I'm not lying. I don't remember. I was very young. Please just leave me alone. But Nate didn't leave. He stood there, staring at her with an expression that mixed confusion, suspicion, and something else she couldn't identify. Finally, he turned and walked away, moving quickly toward the center of camp where the elders gathered. Kaya's heart hammered in her chest. She wanted to run, to disappear into the trees, but there was nowhere to go. She picked up the water bags and carried them to Nalan's wickiup, set them down, and retreated to her own shelter. She waited there as the sun crawled across the sky, listening to the sounds of camp, expecting at any moment to hear angry voices calling her name. But the call, when it came, was not angry. It was cold and formal. Kaya, come to the council fire. She emerged from her wickiup to find a young warrior standing a respectful distance away. His face was neutral, revealing nothing. She followed him through the camp, aware of every eye on her, every whisper that died as she passed. The council fire burned in a clearing at the center of the camp. Around it sat the elders, Kocheta, Nalan, and 3 others, 2 men and 1 woman. Nate stood to the side with several other warriors. Everyone watched her approach. Kocheta gestured for her to sit. She lowered herself to the ground, crossing her legs, keeping her eyes down. Nate has brought a matter to our attention, Kocheta said. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, a current she couldn't read. He says you bear a mark on your shoulder, a mark that is not a simple scar. She said nothing. Is this true? I have a scar, grandfather. I've had it since I was a child. Show us. Her throat closed. It's just a scar. If it is just a scar, Nalan said sharply, then there's no reason not to show us. Kaya's hands moved to the neck of her dress. Her fingers felt numb and distant. She pulled the buckskin down, turning slightly so the firelight fell across her left shoulder blade. Silence. It stretched so long she began to wonder if they were still there, if this was a dream, if she had somehow slipped out of the world entirely. Then Kocheta spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Stand up. Come closer to the fire. She obeyed, her legs shaking. The old man stood with difficulty and stepped close to her, his breath warm on her skin. His fingers, twisted with age, touched the scar gently, tracing its lines. The mark of the falling star, he said. The mark of the first chief's line. Nate made a sound of disbelief. Old man, you're seeing what you want to see. It's just a burn scar, or... I have seen this mark before, Kocheta interrupted, his voice sharp as a knife. Once, many years ago, on a child. A little girl, no more than 3 winters old. The granddaughter of our chief at that time. The soldiers came. There was fire. Many died. The chief's daughter died. Her mate died. The child ... double quotes. He paused, his hand still resting on Kaya's shoulder. The child was never found. We searched for days. We thought she had burned in the fire, or been taken by the soldiers, or died alone in the desert. We mourned her. We moved on. The camp had gone completely silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. That child's name, Kocheta said, turning to face the others, was Taki. She was my great-niece. She was the last direct descendant of the first chief. And this, his hand moved across the scar, is the mark that proved it. Kaya's vision swam. The words made no sense. She tried to speak, but her voice wouldn't come. Nalan stood abruptly. This is impossible. We would have known. Someone would have recognized her. She was 3 years old, Kocheta said. Her face was still round with baby fat. She could barely talk. How would you recognize her 17 winters later? I barely recognize her now, and I am the one who saw her last. He turned back to Kaya. Do you remember anything? Anything at all from before you came to us? She shook her head, then stopped. Fire, she whispered. I remember fire, and singing. Someone singing. Your mother sang to you every night, Kocheta said gently. The same song her mother sang to her, and her mother before that. It is the song of the first chief's line. He began to hum, low and soft, a melody that wound around itself like water over stones. Kaya's knees gave out. She sank to the ground, her hands pressed to her face, because the song was the song from her dreams, the song she'd heard every night for as long as she could remember, the song she thought she'd invented. How? Nalan's voice was hard. How did she come back to us? I don't know, Kocheta said. Perhaps she wandered until someone found her. Perhaps the spirits guided her home. Does it matter? She is here. She is alive. She is the heir to the first chief's line. She is nothing, Nach said, his voice loud and harsh. She has been nothing her entire life. You expect us to believe that this shadow, this burden we've fed and clothed out of pity, is royalty? I expect you to see what is in front of your eyes. I see a convenient story told by an old man who wants to believe in legends. I see a scar that could mean anything. I see a girl no one wants claiming to be someone important. I have claimed nothing, Kaya said, her voice stronger than she expected. She looked up at Nach, then at the others. I never asked to be here. I never asked for your pity. I don't want this. What you want is irrelevant, Kocheta said. You are who you are. I don't know who I am. The words echoed across the camp. People had gathered now, drawn by the raised voices, standing in clusters among the wickiups. They watched in silence. Kaya stood on shaking legs. I am Kaya. I haul water and gather wood. That is all I know how to be. Then you will learn, Kocheta said. As your ancestors did. She turned and walked away from the fire, away from the staring faces toward the edge of camp. No one stopped her. She kept walking until she reached the tree line, then pushed into the darkness between the pines. Behind her, the argument continued. She didn't go far. There was nowhere to go. The mountains were vast and cold, and night was coming fast. She found a fallen log and sat on it, wrapping her arms around herself, trying to process what had just happened. The heir to the first chief's line. It was absurd. It was impossible. She had been nothing for so long that the idea of being something felt like a lie designed to hurt her in a new way. But the song. She couldn't explain the song. Footsteps approached through the trees. She tensed, expecting Nature Nalan, but the figure that emerged was small, Dolly. The girl sat down beside her without asking permission. Is it true? She asked. Are you a princess? I don't know what I am. Kocheta says you are. My mother says he's crazy. Nach says you're a liar. Dolly swung her feet, thoughtful. I think you're scared. I am scared. Of what? Of everything changing, but it already changed. Whether you want it to or not, Kaya looked at the child. When did you get so wise? I listen to people. They think I don't understand, but I do. Dolly leaned against her. Will you have to leave now? I don't know. I hope you don't. I like you. Something in Kaya's chest cracked open. She put her arm around the girl's shoulders, and they sat there together as the last light faded from the sky. The camp was divided. Kaya saw it in the way people moved the next morning, in the careful distance maintained between certain groups, in the way conversations stopped when she approached. Some believed Kocheta. The old man had credibility earned through decades of wisdom and leadership. The mark on her shoulder was too specific, too precise to be random. And there was the song word had spread about that too, about how she knew a melody that only the chief's line had ever sung. Others were skeptical or outright hostile. Nach led this group, arguing loudly that the whole thing was convenient fantasy. How could a child survive alone in the desert? Why had no one recognized her in 17 years? And even if the mark was real, even if she was who Kocheta claimed, what did it matter? She had no training, no wisdom, no skills beyond hauling water. A name didn't make someone a leader. Kaya tried to continue as before, doing her work, keeping her head down. But everything had changed. People stared at her openly now. Some with curiosity, some with anger, some with something like hope. Nalin approached her at midday, carrying a bundle wrapped in soft deerskin. The old woman's face was unreadable. "Come with me," she said. Kaya followed her to a wickiup set slightly apart from the others. Inside, Nalin unwrapped the bundle to reveal a dress of white buckskin, decorated with intricate beadwork and fringe. It was beautiful, clearly made for ceremony. "This belonged to your mother," Nalin said quietly. "I kept it, after she died. I thought perhaps someday I would give it to Doli when she was old enough. But if you are who Kocheta says you are, it should be yours." Kaya touched the dress gently. "You believe him?" "I don't know what I believe. But I know I was cruel to you. We all were. If you are Tak Hai... She stopped, her jaw working. "If you are Taki, then we have committed a great wrong. I'm not asking for apologies. I know, but you should have them anyway. From all of us." Nalin refolded the dress and held it out. "Think about whether you will wear this. It means accepting who you are. And it means accepting the burden that comes with it." Kaya took the bundle but didn't open it again. She carried it to her wickiup and placed it in the corner, where it seemed to glow even in the dim light. 2 days passed. Scouts reported that the soldiers had turned back toward the fort, giving the band temporary relief. But other problems pressed in. Food was scarce at this elevation. Winter was coming early. There were decisions to be made about where to camp, when to hunt, how to survive the months ahead. The elders met in council, and for the first time, they asked Kaya to join them. She sat at the edge of the circle, saying nothing, listening as they debated. The conversation circled, going nowhere. Nach argued for moving lower, where game was more plentiful. Kocheta counseled staying high, where they were harder to find. Others offered opinions that contradicted each other. Finally, Kocheta turned to her. "You have been silent, Taki. What do you think?" The name felt wrong in her ears. I think we should send scouts in all directions. Not just watching for soldiers, but looking for other bands. We're not strong enough alone. We need allies." Nach laughed. "Allies? What allies?" "The Mescalero avoid us. The Chiricahua are scattered. The other Apache bands have their own problems. Then maybe we help them solve those problems. Maybe we offer them something they need, and they help us in return." "And what do we have to offer?" "Knowledge, skills, safety in numbers." She met his eyes. "And a bloodline that still means something to some people." The circle went quiet. Nach's face darkened, but he didn't respond. One of the other elders, a woman named Yaz, spoke up. "The girl may be right. We have grown isolated. Our pride has made us weak. If we die alone in these mountains, what does our pride matter?" The discussion continued, but the tone had shifted. By the time the council ended, a decision had been made. Scouts would go out to seek other bands and offer alliance. It wasn't the decision Nach wanted, and he made his displeasure known. That night, he confronted Kaya at the stream where she was filling water bags. "You think you're clever," he said. "Playing the lost princess, making suggestions in council. But you're still the same girl who hauled water and scraped hides. Nothing has changed." "You're right," she said calmly. "I am the same girl. The mark doesn't change who I've been. It just changes how you see me. I see you clearly. I see someone pretending to be something she's not. Then why does it bother you so much?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Because if you really are Taki, if you really are the heir, then everything we did to you, everything I did to you, becomes something else. Something ugly. It was always ugly, Nach." He flinched as if she'd struck him. Then his face hardened again. "You think you can lead? You think these people will follow someone who doesn't even know how to hold a bow? I don't know if they'll follow me. But I know they won't follow someone who leads with cruelty." She picked up the water bags and walked past him, back toward camp. He didn't try to stop her. The scouts returned after 8 days. They had found a smaller band camped 2 days north, in a valley where a warm spring kept the ground from freezing. The band was struggling low on supplies, weakened by sickness. But their leader, An older man named Nanton was willing to talk about alliance. Kosheta announced that a delegation would go to meet with them, and he announced that Kaya would lead it. The camp erupted in argument. Nach was furious, calling it madness to put an untested girl at the head of something so important. Others agreed. But Kocheta was unmoved. "She carries the mark," he said. "She carries the name. If we are to rebuild what was lost, we must show that the bloodline still lives. That is what Nanton needs to see. That is what all the Apache need to see." Kaya felt sick. "I don't know how to negotiate. I don't know how to lead a delegation. Send someone else. Send Nach. Nach would lead with a warrior's mind. You will lead with something else." "With what?" "That is what you must discover." So she went. The delegation was small. Herself, Kocheta, 2 warriors including Nach, and Yaz. They traveled north through snow that was just beginning to fall, following the scout's trail to the valley where the other band waited. Nanton met them at the edge of his camp. He was old, even older than Kocheta, with eyes that had seen too much loss. His people watched from a distance, thin and wary. The 2 groups sat around a fire. Protocol demanded that they share food first, then talk. But Nanton broke protocol, his gaze fixed on Kaya. "They say you bear the mark of the first chief. Is this true?" Kaya glanced at Kocheta, who nodded slightly. She stood and turned, lowering her dress to expose her shoulder. Nanton stood also, moving close to examine the mark. His hand shook as he reached out to touch it, then pulled back. "I never thought I would see this in my lifetime. I thought the line was extinct." "So did we," Kocheta said. "What is her name?" "She was called Taki as a child. She has been called Kaya since she returned to us." Taki, Nanton tested the word. "Daughter of Naki, who was son of Yatsi, who was daughter of Chaga, who was son of the first chief himself. You know the lineage. Every elder knows it. We learned it as children. But we learned it as history, not as living truth." Nanton sat back down, suddenly looking even older. "Why have you come here?" "To propose an alliance," Kaya said. Her voice was steady, despite the fear that made her hands shake. "Our bands are both small, both struggling. Separately, we may not survive the winter. Together we might. You speak boldly for one so young." "I speak honestly. I don't know how to do anything else." Nanton smiled, just barely. "Tell me what you offer," she told him. "Shelter in the high camps where soldiers rarely came. Hunters who knew the mountains. Knowledge of water sources and game trails. And more than that, a symbol that the Apache were not broken, not scattered beyond recovery. The bloodline of the first chief returned. In exchange, she asked for what his band could provide. More hands for work, more eyes for watching, more strength in numbers." "We bring little," Nanton said. "Many of my people are sick. We have few warriors left. What good are we to you?" "You are Apache," Kaya said. "That's enough." The old man studied her for a long moment. Then he looked at Kocheta. "She is untrained in leadership. You know this. She is learning. She will make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But she will make them with a good heart." Nanton turned back to Kaya. "Do you know what it means to carry that mark? Do you understand the burden of that bloodline?" "No," Kaya said. "But I understand the burden of being nothing. I've carried that my whole life. Maybe it's time to try carrying something else." Nanton laughed, a sound like dry leaves. "You remind me of your great-grandmother. She was honest too, sometimes brutally so. She was also the best leader I ever knew." He stood, straightening with effort. "We will join you. Not because of the mark alone, but because of what I see in your eyes. You have suffered. Good leaders always have." The 2 bands merged slowly, carefully. Nanton's people were weak but grateful. They brought skills and knowledge that complemented what Kaya's band already had. The high camp became more organized, more efficient. Food was still scarce, but it was distributed more fairly. The sick were tended. Children from both groups began to play together. Kaya did not declare herself leader. She did not need to. People came to her with questions, with problems, with requests for decisions. She answered as best she could, often asking Kosheda or Nanton for advice, never pretending to know more than she did. But she was learning. She learned how to listen not just to words but to what lay beneath them. She learned how to find compromise between competing needs. She learned that leadership was not about power but about service, not about being right but about helping others be right. Nach kept his distance, neither helping nor hindering. He performed his duties as a warrior, but did not speak to her directly. Kaya didn't force the issue. Some wounds took time to heal, if they ever did. Winter came in earnest. Snow piled deep in the high places. The band hunted when they could, rationed carefully when they couldn't. There were hard days, days when children cried from hunger, days when the cold seemed to seep into bones and stay there. But they survived. And slowly, word spread. Scouts from other bands came to see if the rumors were true, that the heir to the first chief had returned, that the bloodline lived. Some came out of curiosity. Others came because they needed hope, something to believe in besides endless retreat and slow starvation. Kaya met with each one. She showed them the mark. She listened to their stories. She offered what little her band could spare and asked for nothing but survival in return, collective survival, the kind that came from standing together instead of dying alone. By spring, 4 bands had merged. The high camp could no longer hold them all. They spread out across the plateau, building new camps connected by trails, sharing resources and watches. It was not the vast alliance of old stories, but it was something. It was enough. The trouble came in late spring, when the soldiers returned. They came in force this time, more than 100 men with Apache scouts leading them. They burned the lower camps, drove the game away, poisoned the water sources they could find. It was a campaign of attrition, meant to force surrender through slow starvation rather than direct battle. The council met to decide what to do. The arguments were fierce. Some wanted to fight, to strike back at the soldiers and their Apache traders. Others wanted to flee deeper into the mountains, beyond where the cavalry could follow. Still others, exhausted and afraid, spoke quietly of surrender. The reservation was terrible, they said, but at least there was food. Kaya listened to all of it, feeling the weight of decision pressing down on her shoulders. She had not asked for this. She had never wanted this. But somewhere in the long winter, between the councils and the careful work of keeping people alive, she had accepted it. Not because of the mark, though that had opened the door, but because someone had to carry the weight, and she had discovered she was strong enough to do it. "We don't fight, and we don't flee," she said when the council had exhausted itself with arguing. Nach, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Then what do we do? Surrender? We make them understand the cost." "What cost? They have more men, more guns, more supplies. What cost can we show them?" "The cost of their own souls." She stood, moving to the center of the circle. "The soldiers have Apache scouts, men who hunt their own people for pay. Some of them do it because they're broken, some because they're afraid, but some ... Some might still remember who they are. You want to turn their scouts against them," Ya said. "That's a dangerous game. Everything is dangerous now, but it might work. If we can reach even 1 or 2 of them, if we can remind them of what they're doing, we might divide their forces, make them uncertain." "And how do you propose to reach them?" Nach asked. "Walk into their camp and give a speech?" "Yes," the council erupted. Even Kosheda looked shaken. Nanton raised his hand for silence. "Explain. The soldiers don't know what I look like. Neither do their scouts, most of them. They've heard rumors about the mark, about the bloodline, but they don't know it's me. I can go to them as a refugee, a starving woman looking to surrender. And when I'm in their camp, when I'm among their scouts, I can speak to them, show them the mark. Remind them what they're hunting. They'll kill you," Nach said flatly. "Maybe, but maybe not. And if I can reach even a few of them, if I can plant doubt, it might give us the opening we need. The opening to do what? To survive, to disappear. To make them think twice about following us into these mountains. Cocheta shook his head slowly. This is a terrible risk. If you die, the line dies with you. If I do nothing, we all die. The line means nothing if there's no one left to carry it. The debate continued, but Kaya had already made her decision. She would go. And when the council finally, reluctantly, agreed, Naish surprised everyone by volunteering to go with her. You'll need someone who can fight if things go wrong, he said, not looking at her. And someone who knows how soldiers think. She studied him. Why? He met her eyes finally. Because I was wrong about you. And because some debts can only be paid in blood or action. I'd prefer action. They walked down from the high camps at dawn, carrying nothing but a water skin and a white cloth tied to a stick. The symbol of surrender. It felt wrong in Kaya's hands, but necessary. Naish walked beside her in silence. They had barely spoken since winter, and the space between them was filled with all the words that remained unsaid. Finally, as they neared the valley where smoke from soldier fires could be seen rising, he spoke. I threw the first stone, he said. When we were children, before you even knew I existed. I saw the other boys doing it, and I joined in because it was easy and because everyone else was doing it. He kept walking, his eyes straight ahead. I've thought about that a lot lately. How easy it was. How good it felt to have someone below me, someone I could hurt without consequence. Kaya said nothing. I kept doing it because it became habit, and then because I was afraid. Afraid of what? That if I stopped, if I defended you, I would become you, the outcast. The one everyone hated. He paused at the edge of a dry creek bed. I told myself you deserved it. That you must have done something, brought something dark to deserve such treatment. But you didn't, did you? You were just a child who had survived something terrible. And we made it worse. Yes, Kaya said. You did. He nodded slowly. I can't undo it. I can't make it right, but I can make sure you live through what comes next. That's something. It's not forgiveness. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. They walked on. The soldier camp came into view around midday rows of white tents, horses on picket lines, men moving with the casual confidence of superior force. And scattered among them, wearing a mix of traditional clothing and army-issue gear, the Apache scouts. Kaya and Naish raised the white flag and walked slowly down the slope. They were seen immediately. Soldiers shouted. Rifles were raised. An officer came forward, flanked by 2 Apache scouts. One of them Kaya recognized Dazi, a man who had lived with her band years ago before disappearing. His face was harder now, scarred, but his eyes widened slightly when he saw her. We come to surrender, Kaya said in English, words Cocheta had taught her. The officer, a captain with a sunburned face and tired eyes, studied them. Just 2 of you? Many more will come. We are starving. We cannot run anymore. Where is your camp? I will tell you. But first, I wish to speak with the Apache scouts. Please. The captain frowned. Why? They are still Apache. They should hear what I have to say. He considered this, then shrugged. Fine, but you're surrounded. Try anything and you're both dead. Kaya nodded. The captain called out in Spanish, and several Apache scouts approached, Dazi among them. They formed a loose circle, hands near their weapons, expressions guarded. She looked at each one in turn. Do you remember the stories? The ones your grandmothers told you? About the first chief and the line that flowed from him? We remember, Dazi said quietly. We remember many things we wish to forget. Then remember this. She turned and lowered her dress, exposing the mark on her shoulder. The reaction was immediate. Several scouts stepped closer, their eyes wide. Others backed away. Dazi made a sound low in his throat, something between a gasp and a prayer. The mark of the falling star, he whispered. It exists. You are ... I am Taki, daughter of Naki, granddaughter of Yatsi, blood of the first chief. I was lost. I was found. I was hated by my own people because they did not know who I was. But I know now, and I need you to know. Why? Another scout younger, with anger in his voice. What does it matter? The old ways are dead. The Apache are broken. A mark doesn't change that. No, Kaya agreed. A mark doesn't change anything. But choice does. You have chosen to hunt your own people. Maybe you had good reasons. Maybe you were afraid, or hungry, or tired of running. I don't judge you for that. But I need you to understand what you're hunting. Not just bands of warriors and refugees. You're hunting the last thread of something that stretches back to the beginning. You're hunting your own blood. We hunt to survive, the young scout said, but his voice had lost its certainty. We all do what we must to survive. But survival without honor is just another form of death. The captain had been listening, his face darkening. That's enough. You came to surrender. So surrender. Tell me where your camp is, or I'll have you both shot right now. Kaya looked at him. I will tell you. But know this, the camp is scattered. The people are hidden. And they will not come quietly. You can chase us deeper into these mountains. You can burn every water source and kill every deer. But we will keep moving, keep hiding, keep surviving. And your Apache scouts will keep wondering if they're hunting their own princess. If they're destroying the last piece of something sacred. She could see the doubt on some of their faces. Dazi especially looked stricken, torn between the money he was paid and the mark he had just seen. Or, Kaya continued, speaking now to the captain but keeping her eyes on the scouts, you can let us go. Report that we fled beyond your reach. That pursuing us further would cost more lives than it's worth. Go back to your fort. Let the Apache disappear into legend. Wouldn't that be easier? The captain's face flushed. Are you trying to bribe me with convenience? I have orders to bring in every hostile Apache in this territory. I'm offering you a story that ends without more blood. That seems valuable. For a moment, she thought she had gone too far. The captain's hand moved to his sidearm. Nate tensed beside her, ready to fight even though it would be suicide. Then Dazi spoke up. Captain, sir, she speaks truth about the camps. They are scattered. And the terrain ahead. We would lose men, many men. Apache know those mountains. We do not. Another scout nodded. It is true. The cost would be high. The captain glared at them, then at Kaya. This is not a surrender. This is a negotiation. And I don't negotiate with hostiles. Then shoot us, Kaya said calmly. Shoot us and continue your hunt. But know that when you do, you'll be killing the only chance these scouts have to look at themselves in the mirror and see something other than a traitor. The words hung in the air. The camp had gone quiet, soldiers and scouts alike watching to see what would happen. The captain's jaw worked. Finally he spat on the ground. Get out of here, both of you. And tell your people that if I see Apache raiders anywhere in this territory again, I won't be so generous. Kaya bowed her head slightly. You won't see us, Captain. That's the point. She and Nate turned and walked back up the slope, the white flag still raised, expecting with every step to hear the crack of rifles. But no shots came. They walked until they were out of sight, then kept walking until sunset. Only then did Nate speak. That was insane. It worked. Barely. And only because you shamed them. Shame is a thin thread to hang survival on. All threads are thin. But enough of them together can hold weight. He looked at her with something like respect. You've changed. I've had to. They made it back to the high camps by the following evening. The council was waiting, anxious and sleepless. Kaya told them everything. The captain's face, Dazi's doubt, the thin promise that had been made without words. Will they honor it? Kocheta asked. I don't know, but I think we bought time. Maybe enough to get through summer, to move if we need to prepare for whatever comes next. And the scouts who saw the mark? Some will talk, some will spread the story. Maybe it helps us. Maybe it makes us a bigger target. We'll find out. Nanton smiled grimly. You sound like a leader. I sound like someone trying not to get everyone killed. That is what a leader sounds like. Summer passed. The soldiers did not return. Scattered reports came in. Dazi had left the scouts, disappeared into the desert. Others had deserted too, though not all. The captain had been reassigned. Whether he had told his superiors the truth or had simply given up on his impossible mission, no one knew. The alliance of bands held. More came to join, drawn by word of the mark, by rumors of the first chief's heir, by the simple desperate hope that maybe, possibly, things could be different. Kaya led them as best she could. She made mistakes. She misjudged situations, trusted the wrong people, moved too slowly or too fast. But she learned from each error, and she never stopped trying. Nach became her advisor, then her war leader, then something like a friend. They never spoke again about the stones, about the cruelty, about the years of suffering. Some wounds didn't need words. They just needed time and different actions, day after day, until the scar tissue formed and you could move again without constant pain. One evening in late summer, Kaya sat with Kocheta on a flat rock overlooking the high valley. The sun was setting, painting the world in shades of orange and gold. Below them, cook fires glowed in the gathering darkness. Children's voices carried on the wind. "Your mother would be proud," Kocheta said. "You think so?" "I know so. She was fierce, but she was also kind." "You have both of those things. I don't feel kind. I feel tired. Kindness isn't a feeling. It's a choice you make even when you're tired. Especially when you're tired." They sat in silence for a while. "Do you think we'll survive?" Kaya asked. "Really survive? Or are we just delaying the inevitable? I don't know. The world is changing too fast. The whites keep coming. Their numbers are endless. Maybe we will survive, maybe we won't. But we will have tried. We will have remembered who we are. That matters, does it? If we all die anyway?" "Yes, because the story continues even after we're gone. Someone will remember that the Apache did not surrender easily. That the blood of the first chief returned and tried to save her people. That will be worth something, to someone, sometime." Kaya thought about that. About stories and blood and marks that proved nothing except that you came from somewhere, that you belonged to a line that stretched back into the mist of time. It didn't make you special. It didn't make you powerful. It just made you responsible. "I miss being nobody," she said quietly. "I know, it was simpler. Painful, but simpler. Yes, but you were dying inside. I watched it happen. The girl you were was disappearing, piece by piece, ground away by hate and contempt. This way, you're alive. Really alive. Even if it hurts." She nodded slowly. "Even if it hurts." The first snow came early that year. Kaya stood at the edge of camp, watching it fall, big wet flakes that stuck to her hair and shoulders. She wore the white buckskin dress now, the one that had belonged to her mother. She wore it not because she had to, but because it felt right. Because it connected her to something larger than herself. Dolly found her there, running up with a child's excitement about the snow. The girl was taller now, still young but growing into herself. "Will you tell us a story tonight?" Dolly asked. "About the first chief?" "I don't know all the stories." "Then tell us the one you do know. The one about the girl who was lost and found." Kaya smiled. "That one's not finished yet. Then tell us the beginning. We'll learn the ending when it happens." They walked back to camp together, toward the fires where people gathered against the cold. Someone was already singing, an old song that wound around itself like water over stones. Kaya recognized it now. She had always recognized it. It was the song of her bloodline, the song of her people, the song of everything she had lost and found again. She sat by the fire and began to speak, telling the story of a girl who had been nothing, who had been everything, who had learned that the distance between the two was smaller than anyone imagined. That strength came not from being without scars, but from carrying them with dignity. That leadership was not about being right, but about being present, day after day, even when everything hurt. The snow fell. The fire burned. The people listened. And in the darkness beyond the light, the mountain stood eternal, holding their secrets, waiting to see what would come next, because the story wasn't over. It would never truly be over, as long as someone remembered to tell it. Kaya's shoulder ached in the cold, the mark there burning as it sometimes did. But it was a different kind of burn now. Not pain, exactly. More like recognition. A reminder of where she'd been and where she might yet go. She finished the story, and the people asked for another. So she told them one, and then another. And the night grew deeper, and the snow kept falling. And somewhere in the telling, she realized she had become exactly what she had once believed impossible. She had become herself.
Thanks for watching this story till the end. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And before you go, check out these other amazing Western stories waiting for you next. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you on the next ride.